lavish or flow into the mystery. And in a way, that's what we've been doing as we've had this mystical and metaphysical peek into the Nativity story. We've been looking at the characters and the symbols in the Christmas story, symbols that, we acquaint with the season. We sing about it. We have decorations about these rich and beautiful symbols. And in Unity, we don't throw the Bible out, but we don't hold the Bible in the same place as fundamentalists do, or even as mainline Christianity does. We hold the Bible in a mystical and metaphysical way. We don't take it to be the inerrant, literal Word of God. We believe, though, that there are concepts and ideas and universal principles and archetypes in many of the stories that when we kind of go deep within and ask of ourselves, what could this mean? What does this suggest maybe about my own life's journey? That we will find answers that can be particularly helpful to us. And that's what we've been doing this month with this theme of responding to the divine call. To me, the Christmas story is a birth story, right? The birth of Jesus. And the idea of responding to the divine call in us individually, to me, is absolutely a birth story. I believe that each and every one of us is an evolving, growing being. And I do not mean that only in a physical sense of the word, but very much in the sense of our spirit and our soul, that there is that in us which is infinite, which is eternal, and which is always evolving and growing. And the conscious part of us can either support that and encourage that and nurture that, or can throw up obstacles and roadblocks to it. And part of our journey and practice in Unity is to do the inner work that we need to do, the healing work that we need to do, to be able to release anything that would block us from being able to be more present to this divine call, more present to our own growth and spiritual evolution. So today we're going to be looking at the star and the wise men in the Nativity story. And I want to read to you from the Gospel of Matthew, as we're probably very familiar with hearing it. And then I want to unpack some of it for us symbolically and metaphysically. So we read, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem of Judea," they replied. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshiped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. Such rich imagery in that, right? We have the wise men journeying from the east. We have the star in the dark sky. We have them searching for the baby. We have Herod wanting to know what was going on so that he could go and worship the child too. We have the wise men presenting the gifts. What would Christmas be without that imagery for us? Even though I believe those of us in this room and online don't hold to the story literally that Jesus was born of a virgin, and maybe he was born in a manger, maybe he wasn't, maybe he was born in Bethlehem, maybe he wasn't. But we do, I think, most of us in Unity do believe that there was a person named Jesus, that this Jesus was a teacher, that this Jesus had some very new and radical ideas, so much so that he scared people. He made people angry. He made people worried, hence the desire to get rid of him. And yet his teachings, what we ascribe to him as his teachings, were so important and life-changing that we still talk about him and we argue about him and we do all sorts of things supposedly in his name as a result of, this man and these teachings. But what would your home be like if you decorate for Christmas, if you didn't have the symbols of the star and the wise men and all the things that we kind of associate with Christmas, right? It would be quite different. With regard to the wise men, we assume that there were how many? Do you know the Bible doesn't say there were 3 wise men? Stuff like that, when I learned that in seminary, bothered the heck out of me. How is it that I was led to believe that there were 3 wise men? How is it that I was led to believe that it was an apple in the Garden of Eden? There's no mention of an apple. That's a whole other story. You've heard me tell some of that before. How is it that I was led to believe that there were 3? And then a friend of mine here at the church said, well, there weren't 3. The idea of the 3 came from 3 gifts, assuming each wise man brought a gift. A friend of mine here in the church said to me last Sunday, I hope you're going to talk about the wise men, because there were 4. The 4th one brought fruitcake. I laughed at that too. I have my own personal story about making fruitcakes and selling them door to door when I was very, very broke to be able to pay my rent, So anyway, I've got this thing with fruitcake. I don't eat it. I don't make it anymore. But anyway, the imagery that we associate with Christmas, but metaphysically, the idea of 3 wise men, or however many wise men there were, the idea of those who were held to be sages, to be men of wisdom, because they discounted the women, but to be people of wisdom, were going in search of this child, going in search of something that they believed was important, and that so much so that they were traveling a distance, that they were bringing gifts, and so much so that they were warned in a dream. To me, that's a really powerful part of the story as well, that they were warned in a dream to go home a different way because they didn't want Herod to know, because Herod was going to come and not worship the child, but actually kill the child. They were warned in a dream to go home another way, to go home another way. Have you ever set out on a journey in your life, a spiritual journey toward an intention or a goal, to be going in a certain direction with all your mind and heart, having prepared for that particular journey, thinking that's the way that you were to go, and then something happened that really grabbed your attention, that said, no, you got to go a different way. And that's not easy to do, is it? I think there's some difficulty in that when we think that we're supposed to be going in a certain direction, and then all of a sudden something happens that suggests, no, maybe there's some danger here, or maybe there's something you need to avoid, or maybe there's something that needs to be approached a little bit differently. So you need to not abandon the goal or the intention, but you need to pursue it in a different way. I think it takes a lot of spiritual wisdom and humility to follow that, to pay attention to that, and then courage to actually make that mid-course correction. Ellen Davenport, who is one of our staff members at Unity World Headquarters, says, the wise men representing spiritual wisdom are the only ones who can see the star over Bethlehem, and it's only your inner wisdom that can perceive the divine within you. Only your inner wisdom that can perceive the divine, the God seed within you. The idea that they came from the east is really important. The Bible is so full of symbolic imagery and words, And the concept or the idea that the wise men came from the East is important because of the way the East was understood and valued in that culture. We tend to value and orient things not toward the East, but toward what? The North, right? We tend to orient our maps, our compasses, and so forth toward the North. In the ancient world, it was more likely that they would orient or would value the East. Why? It's believed that probably it was because it looked like the sun rose in the east and set in the west, and the sun brought light to dark, brought light and heat and warmth that helped to grow the crops and all of that. So the idea of journeying from the east is important. We'll take a look at this mystically in just a few moments. In the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, that's a copy of it there. It's a very interesting book. Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, literally went through the Bible and pulled out geographic names and names of characters and places and symbols like gold and frankincense and myrrh and other things, and attempted through research and through his own spiritual insight to offer suggestions on what these various characters or names or symbols could mean. And he says that in scriptural symbology, the East represents the within. The East represents the within. In the MBD, the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, it says, from the regions of interior wisdom come thoughts of reverence and rich gifts of substance and understanding, and every spiritual help for the holy life, the Christ child, that has begun its growth in consciousness. What would the imagery of Christmas be like without the star? I mean, one of the most common symbols on top of a Christmas tree, if it's not an angel, it's a what? It's usually a star. It's usually one or the other. And of course, both of those are very much represented in the stories in the various Gospels of Christmas. And when you think of a star, what do you think of? I think of light. I think of hope. When do you see the stars? At night when it's dark, right? And the darker the night, what? The brighter the stars appear to us. Have you ever felt like you've been in a really deep, dark night of the soul? Have you ever had that time in your life or experience in your life, and then yet something, you read something, or you remember something, or someone reaches out to you in a certain way, and it's as if the most brilliant, bright star has rose in the midst of your darkness, and the darkness is still there, right? It's still there, at least for a period of time. It's still there, but now you're not fixated so much just on the darkness. You see what? You see the light. You see something that is encouraging. You see something that gives maybe a sense of hope or a sense of direction. The light, the star appearing in the darkest part of the night. In our lives, the star can represent the light of our inner wisdom and intuition, guiding us on our journey, giving us hope, giving us some inspiration, especially when it seems darkest and most challenging. As I was going back through my lesson, which I always do, I look at it every day during the week before sharing it with you, and then my routine on Saturday, you will always find me in one room in my house, sitting with my notes that I've already been looking at, sitting down and saying, is there anything else that's moving, anything else that I think might be of service or helpful? And that's been my routine for more than 40 years. At 3 o'clock-ish or so, that's what I'm doing. Doesn't matter, that's what I'm doing. And the family of, now we're empty nesters actually, but when the family and kids were growing up, they knew that mom's in there, just leave her alone, let her go do her thing. So as I was looking at this a little bit more yesterday, some new ideas came to me, or some richer things that came to me that I want to share with you. And I said that this is part of responding to the divine call, and I called the message Navigating the Journey. I think that life is a journey, and I think that those of us who are inclined toward personal growth, and those of us who are interested in spiritual concepts and in teachings, we know that there's a certain navigating of that there are ups and downs and ins and outs. There's times that it's dark and heavy. There's times that it's light and bright and easy and joyful, and that all of it is grist for the mill. All of it helps us to be able to give birth to just an ever-growing version of ourselves. And so here were 4 things that I kind of refined yesterday. Number 1, in navigating our journey, number 1, we go within to God, to spirit first. We go within to God, spirit, whatever words you're comfortable with, first, and then to man, or whatever we're directed to go toward. Like the wise men traveling from the east representing the within. And so turning within first becomes our practice. It doesn't mean we might not seek outer guidance. It does not mean that we don't turn to an expert or a counselor or a therapist or a friend or a prayer partner. It doesn't mean that we don't do those things. It just means we do something else first. And the something else that we do first is we go within. We go within for our own guidance. And that guidance then leads us to what is the next right or good step for us. And it might be to seek therapy. It might be to go ask a trusted friend. It might be to go do something or change something. But we don't start with the outer. We start with the inner. I don't know about you, but I don't get a whole lot of messages from the outside world to live my life that way. Do you? It's the opposite usually. It's get everything organized out here, get the right things in your life so your life looks good from the outside in, and then you'll be happy. That's really not the way it works spiritually. It's not the way it works in reality. It starts in here first, and then that begins to change things from the outside. And so in so many ways, those of us in this teaching are in a rather radical teaching, because it suggests that we do things kind of counterintuitively, or at least things that aren't the most common way that people talk about doing things. Does that make sense what I'm saying to you? So we go within to God first, then to man, or whatever needs to be done or met after we've gone within. The second, in navigating our journey and responding to the divine call, we are open, teachable enough to be guided. We are open and teachable enough to be guided, to be led towards something our soul recognizes as divine. To be led towards something our soul, our gut, our inner self recognizes to be divine. The wise men traveling from the east to the child recognize that journey was because they recognized there was something of value. They believed it to be the Messiah, of value. And so they were willing to leave whatever was normal and routine for them in search of that. They were open. They were willing to be led. I mean, in a way, if you think about it, a wise man, you might say, would be so smart, so intellectual, so knowledgeable that they wouldn't need any other guidance. But in the story, as we understand it, they came from the east, led by the star. To me, that is just a beautiful suggestion, a beautiful reminder that I need to be open, teachable enough to be guided, teachable enough to be guided, to be led towards something my soul recognizes as divine. And then as I was thinking about the word recognize, I was also thinking about a term we use a lot, excuse me, in metaphysics, and it's the term resonate. And it's not actually unique to metaphysics. Many people who first come into unity, and I suppose this is true of coming into, say, divine science, science of mind, centers for spiritual living, that when they come in and they listen and they kind of experience what the teaching is or the service is, there's a feeling, and a word that they use to describe that feeling is, it resonated with me. And I got to thinking about that yesterday. I think that recognition and resonating are absolutely linked. That when our soul recognizes something that's true, that's right, that's good for us, there is the feeling, I think resonance is a feeling. There is the feeling of resonating with that. And so I think it's really valuable and important that we pay attention to that. When there's that feeling of resonance, are we recognizing something? Is our soul recognizing, this is for me, this is what I need to know, this is what I need to do or not do, this is what I need to say yes to or no to, this is what I need to remember. We are open, teachable enough to be guided, to be led towards something our soul recognizes as divine. Third, in navigating the journey, we bring our best gifts forward. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh were valuable items in those days. Gold for obvious reasons, right? It's always been, well, I don't know about always, it's been for a very long time, a very valued substance. Frankincense, when burned, has a beautiful fragrance to it, and it's often used in worship services. And myrrh, frankincense and myrrh both come from a tree, from the sap of a tree, but different kinds of trees. Myrrh it was often used in worship, but it was also used in embalming. Now think about it for a moment. Wise men bringing a gift that's used for death to a baby? Doesn't that sound kind of odd? That sounds odd to me. Anyway, I'm digressing here. The gifts were of value: gold, frankincense, myrrh. Myrrh was also used somewhat in a medicinal way to dull or to numb pain. But here we have the idea of bringing something of value into the experience. Stay with that just for a moment. Of bringing something of value into the experience. As we navigate our soul's journey, as we navigate where we are meant to be, what we are meant to do, how we are meant to live our life, part of that is bringing our unique gifts fully and completely into that experience. We don't have the same gifts. I'm glad that we don't. I'm glad you have gifts that I don't have. And I'm glad that I have some gifts that maybe you don't have. When we bring our gifts into an experience, essentially we're bringing our uniqueness. We're bringing our authenticity. We still, I think, as a culture, have a long way to go to opening up and recognizing the unique expressions of humanity and not marginalizing those that look different or choose differently than we do. To be able to look at the uniqueness of each soul incarnating in whatever body form, whatever sexual orientation, whatever ideology, and to look at that as something rich and something to be celebrated, not something to try to squeeze everybody into a small, tiny little box that looks a certain way. In order to do that, as individuals, as families, as communities, we have to celebrate and acknowledge and allow people to be their authentic selves. Does that make sense? Would you not agree that there's some room for growth in our world today around that? I think there's a lot of room for growth today in our world around that. And so we bring, in navigating our journey, we bring our best gifts forward. And if we happen to be one who does not fit the smaller confines of what used to be called normal, we don't hide who we are. We were born right the first time. Right? And so we bring the best of us. It doesn't mean that we might have some warts that we need to deal with, some parts of our personality that are kind of icky that need to be healed or need to be softened or all of that personal growth kind of stuff. But we still bring who we really are into the picture. We will create, I believe, with all my heart, we will create a much healthier world, a much happier world, a much better world when we are able to do that. And then the last in navigating our journey and responding to the divine call is we're willing to be redirected when we need to change course. We're willing to be redirected when we need to change course. I said to you earlier that one of my favorite parts in this part of the Christmas story is that they were warned in a dream to return home, still go where they were from, but to return home by a different way. By a different way. They were warned in a dream, so it meant there was something that grabbed their attention. And the word warn, does that bring up warm, fuzzy feelings for you? Doesn't for me. They said dream, not nightmare. But they said warned in a dream. Don't go home the same way. Go a different way. Go a different way. Just as sometimes we have signs pointing us in a direction we are to go, and then sometimes we're given a sign that, okay, now you need to change course. It doesn't mean you don't get to go where you're supposed to be going, but you may have to go by a different route for whatever reason. And to me, the trickiest part of some of that is to be able to discern when it is the difference between an obstacle that I need to go around or when it is an obstacle that is truly saying, stop, you may need to change plans entirely. I don't have a quick answer for how you know which is which. That's where I think our own inner work and prayer work and meditation work equips us over time to be better able to discern that for ourselves. I don't think anybody knows you well enough to be able to tell you which it is for you. That's your work to do. It's fitting, as I was working on this lesson, one of our members had shared an email with me in response to a Sunday talk I'd given last week or the week before, and I remembered that email and I thought, that fits perfectly this piece that I'm speaking to here, that we're willing to be redirected when we need to change course, just like the wise men were warned in a dream to go home by another way. And so I reached out to Lynn McGinnis to ask if I could share what she had written to me, because I think it may be of help to you as well. So she had written me thanking me for a particular Sunday service, and then she said, I also had an insight that I wanted to share with you. As we know and see, when we follow divine guidance, our path is cleared for us, step by step. While I was in Florida, I tried to do something for the wrong reason. That was not for my highest good, and would not have furthered my spiritual or personal growth. I was unable to do it. In short, I was blocked. I could have kept pushing until maybe I moved this mountain out of the way. But after about half an hour, I recognized I needed to let it go. This experience taught me that I need to honor the blocks as much as the synchronous series of events which happen when I'm going in the right direction. I'm going to read that last sentence to you. This experience taught me that I need to honor the blocks as much as the synchronous series of events which happen when I'm going in the right direction. Isn't that helpful? Thank you, Lynn, for giving me permission to share that. So I don't know how this has been for you, but I've enjoyed being able to share with you a different way of looking at the Christmas story and making it, I think, not a Hallmark version, although I love the Hallmark version of Christmas too, but making it more of a personal, practical application. What can it mean for us in how we approach our life and what maybe is wanting to be birthed in us, a new direction, a new career, a new relationship, a new phase of our life, and to see that we can actually get glimmers of teachings and ideas in the story that can really be practical and helpful to us. As I close, I want to read a few words to you from Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, about Christmas. He wrote, "Christmas is about the birth of the Christ consciousness at the center of the human soul." The Christ consciousness, not a person, the Christ consciousness at the center of a human soul. It does not belong to the past. It is a vital, living, present truth. The bringing forth of the Christ child is not work that was finished in Bethlehem. It is taking place in our midst every day. It is this that we celebrate. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah. Namaste.